How's it going, everybody, and welcome to the first installment of this beginner's Kali Linux course. My name is Jack and I'll be walking you through this video series as comprehensively as I can, but if I do miss anything, feel free to leave a comment and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. So today's lesson has some structure to it, which I'll run you through briefly, but before I do, please note that I have added some links in the description so you can skip through the sections if you have already covered them elsewhere or if they are just not applicable to you. Now firstly, what I'm going to do is show you where you can download the Kali Linux ISO from, and which ISO you need to download based on your processor's architecture. Secondly, I'm going to run through a Hyper-V lab setup for the Kali Linux install. However, this might not be applicable to people who are installing Kali Linux directly to their machine, so if it is not applicable to you, please just skip through that section and I will show you how to burn Kali Linux straight to a USB using a tool called Rufus. And last but not least, I will run you through the Kali Linux install itself and how to partition your disk to get the best performance out of your machine. Now, to download the Kali Linux ISO, all we need to do is simply open a web browser, go to Google, type Kali downloads, and it should be the first one in the list, which it is, kali.org/downloads. Now we want to click this, and here we will see Kali Linux 64-bit or Kali Linux 32-bit. We'll also see a Kali Linux Lite, which is basically Kali Linux with only the bare essentials to be able to boot, but we want the full package, so we're going to go for one of these two. Now, if you've got 64-bit, download 64. If you've got 32-bit, download 32. However, if you don't know, you can simply find out by running the Start menu, typing cmd, going to a command prompt and using the following command: wmic space os space get space OSArchitecture. Now what this does is use wmi to return the architecture of your CPU. As you can see, mine is 64-bit, yours might be the same, or it might be 32-bit. If you're using Linux, you can also use this command uname-a to get the same result. Now once you know what that is, close command prompt and download the right one accordingly. I'm going to use a HTTP download and click save. Now it will start downloading and I'll skip to when it's done. Now my download is complete. What I'm going to do is open downloads and the ISO is there. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to set up your Hyper-V environment. If this isn't applicable to you and you're installing this straight to your machine, check the description for the link and skip straight to burning the ISO. Now if you have not enabled Hyper-V as a feature in your machine, you can do so by opening the Start menu and typing Features. You'll see Turn Windows Features on or off. You want to click that and wait for it to load and keep waiting for it to load. There we go. Now you want to go down to here and you want to find Hyper-V. Now if this is unchecked, what you want to do is you want to check it and hit OK. Now it shouldn't prompt you to restart your machine. It should only prompt you to do that if you uninstall Hyper-V. So you should click OK. It should take you through the process of installing it. Once it is done, you can hit the Start menu and type Hyper-V. You'll see Hyper-V Manager there. I've got mine in the taskbar. Now what we're going to want to do is open up our Hyper-V Manager, and in the pane to the right we will see New. We're going to click that and select Virtual Machine. Now you can call it what you like, however I'm going to call mine lnx-kali-01. We're going to select a Generation 1 machine. Now Kali recommends that you give it 2 gigs of RAM or more. I'm going to give mine 4 just to make sure it has enough, and I'm going to leave dynamic memory selected, which will allow my RAM to shrink and increase as needed by the system. If you are limited on RAM, I suggest unchecking this. Now I'm going to click Next. We're going to leave it not connected for now. Now for the virtual hard drive, I'm going to give mine 70 gigs. Kali does recommend that you give it 20 or above, but 70 should be enough for this without needing to expand it later. Now we're going to click Next. Now what we want to do is check Install an operating system from a bootable image file. We're going to hit Browse, and what we're going to do is we're going to find the ISO that we've just downloaded and select that. Now click Next again, make sure all the details are correct and hit Finish. Now once that virtual machine is created, what we need to do is go to the Virtual Switch Manager. Now you might have some already if you've played with Hyper-V before, but if not, you're going to want to click New Virtual Network Switch, select External and hit Create Virtual Switch. Now you can call it what you like. I've called mine External Switch just to keep it simple, and we're going to hit OK. Now, Now that the switch is created, we're going to hit Settings, we're going to click the network adapter, and we're going to select that switch and hit Apply. Now what that does is basically allow internet to get through to your VM through your network adapter. Now for those of you who aren't using Hyper-V, what we're going to quickly do is run through a demonstration of how to create a Kali Linux bootable USB. What we need is Rufus, so we need to go to our web browser, open up a new tab, in Google type download Rufus, and it should again be the first link, rufus.akio.ie, if that's how you pronounce it. We're going to click that, and we will scroll down to the latest download, which at this time is 2.18. Now we're going to click that and save. I've already saved mine, so I'm not going to do that. But once it's done, we're going to open up our file explorer. We're going to go to downloads. Yours will be in downloads, mine's actually not, it's in tools, Rufus, and here we go, this is the executable. So we're going to click this, allow it to make changes. Now, I'm actually doing mine with an SD card because I only own one USB and it's hiding from me. So we're going to select the USB on your device. We're going to leave all the defaults. Your cluster size might be 4096. That's fine, just leave it default. You can call it what you like. Now what we're going to do here is change this from FreeDOS to ISO image. Now we're going to click and we're going to go to our downloads. And we're going to find the ISO that we previously downloaded. Now we're going to want to double click this. And we're going to click Start. Make sure that Quick Format is checked, by the way, before you do this. Click Start. The images uses syslinux, blah blah blah. Yeah, that's fine. Write in ISO image mode. You might not get this, but if you do, just leave it as default. All data will be lost, that's fine. Make sure you're not doing it with a USB that has lots of data on it that you need, because it will destroy all of it. Now I've just skipped through that process because it did take quite a few minutes. But once that is done, we can click Close. Now we have a bootable Kali Linux USB that we can use to install it to your system. What you're going to want to do next time you boot your system is go into your BIOS and change the boot order so that your system is booting from USB before it is booting from the hard drive. Now if you're using the bootable USB and your BIOS mode is UEFI, you might also have to look for another option, usually under Advanced in the BIOS, called Secure Boot, and disable that. Once that is done, you should be good to restart your system, it should boot up using the USB, and you should be given the Kali Linux install menu. I'm going to connect to my virtual machine now and start it, and I should also get the same. And there you go, there's the menu. If you've created a Generation 1 virtual machine, or you're booting from a USB and your BIOS mode is in UEFI, then your menu is going to look slightly different, and I'll show you what it's going to look like now. So this is what your boot menu is going to look like if your BIOS is UEFI. And all you want to do is go down to Start Installer and select that. But now I'm going to switch back to our non-UEFI menu. So what we're both going to want to do now is go down to Graphical Install, select that. Now what I'm going to do is select English, because believe it or not, that is the language I speak. I'm going to go to United Kingdom, that is the closest place to me. And I'm going to select British English. Now what it's going to do is install some drivers, some components and some features, and I'm going to skip to the end because it does take a couple of minutes to finish. Now once that is complete, you will be prompted to give a host name to your Kali system. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to call mine Jacko Labs. Don't worry about a domain name because we're not connecting to a domain. And it's going to ask you for a root password. In this case, I'm going to use the password root. If you are using this as a primary system, I do not recommend giving it the password of root because that is not very secure. Now the system is going to detect your disks, and we're going to move on to the partitioning tool. So here what we can do is go down to manual because we want to partition the disks ourselves. And here we will see our free space. I've got 75.2 gig, you might have something slightly different. but we're going to click that and click continue. It's going to ask us if we want to create a new empty partition table. Yes, we do. Now here we see our free space. I have 75.2 gigabytes. You might have something slightly different depending on what you chose. We're just going to select that and hit continue and create a new partition. Now the first partition we're going to create is the boot partition. This doesn't necessarily need to be big, it only needs to be 512 megabytes. So we're going to type that in and select. Now it's going to be a primary partition and we're going to stick it at the beginning. ext4 is a journaling file system, as you can see. That is a bit overkill for something as small as 512 meg. So what we're going to do is choose ext2 and we're going to select the mount point as boot. Now the reason we create a boot partition and put it at the beginning of the drive is because we want to separate the kernel and the boot files from the rest of the system and stick it right at the beginning, so when the system loads it can see the boot partition straight away and therefore increase the performance of the boot times. So we're going to hit that and go continue. Now as you can see here I have a completely different setup, but ignore the drives for now. All we want to look at is this boot partition. Now if you are running a UEFI BIOS, the boot partition is going to be slightly different. So we're going to go into this, and as you can see I've named it boot, that's optional, but under the use as we're going to change it to EFI System Partition. We'll still keep it at 512 meg. However this time the bootable flag is a factor. We need to make this on. As the mount point on this isn't /boot, we do need to make the bootable flag on. So we're just going to continue with that. And if you do have a UEFI BIOS, then that is the way you need to do it. Now we've got 74 gig left, so we're going to select that, create a new partition, and this one is going to be for the applications and software that is installed on the operating system. Now you can give it anything from 10 gigabyte upwards. For my case, I think I'm only going to give it 20. If you think you're going to be installing a lot of things on the system, then you're going to want to give it more, but 20 should be plenty. Now we're going to select primary for this as well and put it in the beginning. This will put it second to load after the boot. We're going to leave it default at ext4 and we're going to leave the mount point at just a /. Done setting up the partition and continue. Now we're going to select the free space again and create another partition. Now this one is going to be for the swap area. Now the general rule of thumb with the swap area is to match the gigabytes you have in RAM. So if you have 4 gigabytes of RAM, give yourself 4 gigabytes of swap area. However, if you do go lower than that and have 3 gigabytes of RAM, you want to give yourself 5 gigabytes of swap area. And if you have 2 gigabytes of RAM, give yourself 6 gigabytes of swap area. The whole purpose of the swap area is basically to help your RAM cope. So if your RAM becomes fully utilized, what the swap area is going to do is it's going to take some load off the RAM. So the less RAM you have, the more swap area you need really. So what we're going to do is give ourselves 4096 megabytes, which is 4 gigabytes, because I'm using 4 gigs of RAM, and select go. This is going to be a primary drive as well, and we're going to put it at the beginning. Now what we're going to do here is use as and change from ext4 to swap area. Leave the bootable flag as off. This is a legacy option that is probably going to be removed in the future, and continue. Now I've got 50.6 gigabytes of free space left. I'm not sure how much you have left, but we're going to use all of it for the home partition. So we're going to go yes, continue. This is also going to be primary. However, if you are planning to have some extra partitions in the future, then it is probably better for you to choose a logical partition for this. I'm just going to select primary. Now we're going to leave this as ext4 and we're going to leave the mount point as /home. And that is pretty much good to go. So what I'm going to do now is click finish partitioning and write changes to disk. Do we confirm? Yes we do, and continue. So what's going to happen now is the disks are going to be formatted, they're going to be partitioned, and the Kali Linux system is going to be installed. Now this can take quite a while, so what I'm going to do is skip and I'll see you on the other side. Now during the install I've been given this prompt asking me if I want to use a network mirror. As you can see, it says it may make newer versions of software available. However, we're going to address this in the next video, how to update and upgrade your software and your packages and get it all running on the newest versions. So what we're going to do is actually select no for this. So here we have a second prompt during the installation, which is basically telling us if we do have another operating system in our environment, it has failed to detect it, and by proceeding we might make that other operating system temporarily unbootable. If you have got another operating system and you are trying to dual boot Kali, then you may need to address this issue. However, we're only installing this on a fresh system, so we can go ahead and click yes. Now it's going to ask us where we want to put the grub bootloader, and that's going to be on the only drive that we have. So we're going to click this and continue. So now the installation will continue, and I will see you again when it is complete. So the installation has completed. We can go ahead and click continue. It's going to finish up the remainder of the installation. Now, as you can see, it is setting up Kali for the first time for use. And lo and behold, here we have the login screen. So we're going to log in with root and the password that I chose, which is root. And there you go, we've successfully installed Kali Linux on our system. If you did have any issues during that installation procedure that I didn't address, please feel free to just leave a comment and I'll get back to it as soon as possible. I hope you come back for lesson 2, where I'll be introducing you to apt and we'll be upgrading the packages on the system ready to use. If you did enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more, please hit that subscribe button. Cheers for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao for now, guys.